Hey everyone, welcome back to Alpenglow. So for anyone who's new to this channel, since I've uploaded a video in this series last, this city is focused on expansion and road building and transit, and there's really not much detailing outside of putting down some trees and fences. And obviously, as you can see, it's set in the Snowfall DLC, which I really like. And so we're finally back with Alpenglow. Let's get started. So this is episode 7, and today, as you can see, we raised up this freeway. This is the main freeway that runs from east to west and, of course, west to east through the city. And we just did that since it's kind of a more suburban area. They don't need the freeway to be as compact or fit in with other buildings and stuff. And now we're adding on this diamond interchange, and we're just hooking up the freeway to the big road layout that we made last episode, I think. In the city, I wanted to go for like a mix of different styles of interchanges. So we start with this diamond interchange. Of course, we've previously done like a cloverleaf interchange, sort of like a modified Parclo interchange, dogbone, diverging diamond, you name it. We've probably done it, trumpet, of course. So I just wanted to fit in a few normal diamond interchanges in here because that's really mostly what you see on like the suburban style of freeway. And now we're starting on a Parclo interchange, or partial cloverleaf, which is honestly one of my favorite to build because it has a mix of these cloverleaf ramps and some traffic lights with left turns and slip lanes and just normal merging lanes. And I think it's just a good mix of different styles of ramps and that sort of thing. So, and it's not quite as impressive or challenging to build as, say, like a stack interchange or a cloverleaf. Full cloverleaf, but I still think it's really fun. And this ends up being one of my favorite interchanges in the city. I think it looks pretty nice, at least from above. And that's really, this whole series is about making a city that looks cool from above. And, you know, you get down and the detail looks all right, but we're not putting down any props or decals or anything like that. We're just going for, you know, pure infrastructure and expansion. And so this footage, by the way, it's a little jumpy like that. That's just something that happened when I was recording it. It's like in the footage, not in the game. And unfortunately, there's nothing I can do about that. So I'm sorry about that if that's annoying. But anyway, the hardest part of a Parclo or normal cloverleaf as well is getting the right slope on the actual cloverleaf ramp. And of course, the easiest way to do that is now the tool that Move It has, where you can select a bunch of nodes and it automatically creates the smoothest possible slope between them. But this footage is pretty old at this point. I mean, it might even be like a couple years old from the point of upload. So I don't think Move It had the feature at that time, or if it did, I either wasn't aware of it or just hadn't learned it yet. So if you see any like missing mods or anything like that, that would have been handy. This footage for this whole series is already recorded. And anyway, I initially intended it to be basically a very light on mods city. Obviously, we have to have things like Move It and network extensions and everything like that, the most basic mods. But I really just wanted the bare minimum to be able to get a realistic look with this city without getting too into the details, because that's usually how I play the game, and I just really wanted to take a break from that for a while I was recording this. But this whole series has been recorded, and so I just need to edit, and I have some really cool cinematic videos all recorded, and I just need to edit those and of course upload the rest of the actual build before I can show those off. And I've also been working on some really interesting like transit diagrams, which I'm pretty happy with. So I'll, of course, share those with everybody as well. But in the meantime, let's get back to actually building this city. So really soon here, we're going to finish up this Parclo after I finish adjusting these ramps. And then we're going to be moving on to extending one of 2 light rail lines that runs through here. And this whole area is intended to be kind of a secondary downtown. Like, this is a slightly older and smaller city center than the main downtown Alpenglow that we built in the first episode. And this is similar to another small town we built, I think it was last episode. It was like a more older historical town, and all these have kind of grown out. They've added low-density residential neighborhoods on, and then they've all just kind of met up. So we have this conglomeration of like 3 cities that are essentially now all under the name Alpenglow. but historically they were all quite different. So at the time of recording this footage, I really didn't know like what the names were going to be or what these transit lines were going to be called or really where they were even going to go. But I guess I could update that now because everything's named in the final city since I built it all. So this town that we're building this episode is called Cardston. The one that we built, I think it was last episode, the small, older city center, is called Bayard. And these are all now connected into Alpenglow, so it's all one city. And then we have two of these light rail lines. You can see the one kind of going left to right there. Well, now I've moved the camera. But there's one that basically comes, they both come in from the east, from Alpenglow. One of them keeps going west and runs right through Cardston, and the other one comes west and then turns south. And they meet up at a transit center that we're going to build there later on. And so the one that just keeps going west is the orange line, and then the one that comes west and then turns south is the blue line. And the blue line ends up being the biggest, longest main light rail line through all of the city. It covers pretty much the entire length of the whole map, basically. And then the orange line is a slightly shorter line that basically carries traffic from Cardston to downtown Alpenglow, whereas the blue line goes to downtown Alpenglow and then keeps on going to stuff that we're going to build in later episodes. And now we're moving on to this highway, which basically I'll describe the highway layout really quickly. There's the main highway that goes east to west, which I mentioned before that we were working on, and then there's this kind of ring road, which I'm calling the Cardston Cutoff. I think that's, had to fit in some alliteration somewhere. But basically, that ring road loops north around downtown Alpenglow and then comes south here and runs next to Cardston over to an airport, which I placed off screen. I don't have any footage of it. It's really just the vanilla international airport. It's not very interesting, so that's why I didn't record it. But anyway, this road runs there and it gets a lot of traffic, so I wanted to grade separate the rail from the road here, and so that's why we're doing this big sunken intersection here. This ends up being one of the busiest intersections in the city, and it handles traffic pretty well, honestly. I'm pretty happy with it. And now we are setting up the time traffic light, which was definitely necessary when you're doing really weird intersections like this that don't really play by the game's rules. It's pretty important to do this. If you're actually looking for like that sort of realism, of course it's not necessary. It'll still function okay. But I think when you have these two parallel roadways running and intersecting kind of with that little 4-lane road in between, the cars don't like that with the vanilla AI, so you have to tell them exactly what to do with Traffic Manager. And it works. It's not perfect. It does allow U-turns when I don't really want there to be U-turns there, but there's nothing you can really do about it. Obviously, people have to turn left to go through that 4-lane road and able to then technically go straight onto the road they're turning onto. But I really did want to keep the aesthetic of the highway roads running through here, kind of like it's not really a divided freeway or anything, but it's still a very high capacity, high speed arterial road that doesn't really have any roadside zoning or anything. It's just mostly for people to access the airport. So we do accomplish that, and despite some of the setbacks of the intersection, it's kind of a balance, and it works well enough, I think. All right, so I'm going to let you finish watching me put this together, and we're going to start a new neighborhood, and I'll be back in just a few minutes. I hope you enjoy this segment. a nice little view of what we've done so far, and we're going to continue this episode by making this neighborhood called Minton, and this sits right between Bayard and what will eventually be Cardston. And it's interesting because it has the rail line running right through it, and we're going to do something kind of cool with that. Here the footage is pretty choppy. I'm really sorry about that. Hopefully you can still kind of tell what's going on. I'm just laying out a typical suburban-ish road layout. I try to do a mixture of like a fused grid with some cul-de-sacs, and we'll be doing some variations on this, especially right near the end of the series when we really fill out the whole map. And this little kind of bump out here off the main road is almost like on the verge of being a hillside sort of neighborhood, like at the base of the mountain here. So that's going to be some nicer houses with slightly bigger properties, and then we do have this road running up here into the mountains under these power lines, which I imagine would probably be for trail access and not for private homes. And I've been going with a bit of a theme over this city, that it's kind of like a destination for hiking and just like outdoor activities. So I've been including some roads like that kind of go up into the mountains, and I imagine that they would have trailheads at the end and just have access to all these mountains, because the map is mostly mountains actually. Now I'm going to start trying to fit this road layout into where this highway is. So I'm imagining that quite a few of these roads are quite older than the highway, and that this, especially this cutoff portion of the highway that's been added in after the main highway to route traffic in or around the city. So I wanted it to look like some of these have been broken off, like the grid here continues from Minton into Bayard, and then across the highway there to the main portion of Alpenglow. But the freeway actually cuts through some of those roads. Sometimes there's a tunnel or a bridge that carries it across for the more important roads. So that's sort of what I was going for, but then also just some cul-de-sacs and frontage road types of roads, just to make it look like to some degree they've broken up the grid, and to some degree it's still there. Okay, so now I'm going to let you watch these time lapses of this neighborhood Minton growing, and then there's another one of a neighborhood we make called Mountainview. I'm going to let you watch those, and I'll be back in just a minute. Enjoy the segment. All right, so to finish off this episode, we're putting in some transportation lines, and as you can see here, we just put in the orange light rail line, which I was talking about earlier. And now we're bringing this bus line over across from what I'm calling Midtown into the Bayard and Minton area. And this ends up serving that area, and then it curves over to the left to kind of hit the south end of Cardston, which we're going to build, I think, next episode or within the next couple episodes. So it's one of the longer routes, and all of this is going to be visible in the transit map I'm making, of course, and I think I'm also going to try to upload the save game because there aren't really a lot of mods or assets, so it should be pretty accessible. Other than the fact that it's a pretty big city, so it's really going to test your processor, but I think it might be worth a shot if you're interested in doing that. And now we're doing another bus line, which is covers slightly farther north, and it stops into that transit center you can see there. That will be focused on in another episode. And this just kind of fills in the gap between there and the 2 light rail lines that meet up at Cardston. And just ignore all the bus line names that I'm putting in, because we go back and rename all those and get a more unified numerical system, which is pretty cool. And now we're just taking this dark green line, which is one that goes all the way from the north end of downtown down to Cardston, and it'll funnel people in from kind of the western part of downtown into the southern part of the city. And now, as we approach the end of the episode, I'd like to say thank you so much for watching, and it feels good to be back in this series. I hope that you enjoy it as well. There's quite a bit more to come, and I'll hope to see you in those episodes.